Welcome to the theater. Take a seat, grab some popcorn, and get ready for another horror movie double bill. This is Friday Night Fratricide.
Good evening. Welcome back to Friday Night Fratricide. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
I told you last night. No.
You told me 2 seconds ago when I forgot to turn on my microphone and made that exact same joke. Yes, it is time for another horror movie double bill. What have we got this week? We've got Video Nasties.
Mm-hmm.
Got a nasty little episode for you all.
Yeah, very nasty.
Dirty episode.
It's banned by
It's
the
banned.
BVFC.
Is it going to be banned if we talk about it?
Maybe.
Yeah, it might be.
This is a pirated recording.
Yeah. I should put
We've
like some
somehow
sort of like filter over the top so it makes it sound like
these.
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
I am Fraser.
And I am Ewan.
And, okay.
Oh.
And we are the Happy Brothers, here to talk about horror films.
Yep.
As we do every week.
Pretty much.
The same thing we do every week. Video Nasties this week.
Mm-hmm.
Good list to choose from.
There's a lot of films. There's like 70 odd.
And it's not like, we're not stretching definitions of our themes or anything like that. It's very cut and dry. We have a list of these films to pick from, and we picked them. And there's still plenty more. So
there's plenty more. We could do a Video Nasties Part 2 at some point in the future.
But the two that we've got for you this week, I think pretty good choices.
Yeah.
We have Mario Bava's A Bay of Blood.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, what's his name? William Asher's Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker.
Mm-hmm.
Or Night Warning.
Night Warning.
As it was renamed, I think.
It was also called Evil Protege, I think.
There's not... okay.
Apparently.
Not sure.
I think that's what it's listed as on IMDb.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's weird.
I don't know
Because there's
why.
not really a protege in it.
Yeah, I don't know why it's called that.
To be fair, there's not a butcher or a baker or a nightmare maker either. Well,
Or a Warning in the Night.
or yeah.
None of these titles make any sense.
They don't at all. But we'll get to that. Do you want to start with Bay of Blood? Because I think
Sure.
we both watched that first.
Yes. We'll start with Bay of Blood. Actually also had a bunch of alternate
It
titles.
did. Some good
It
ones,
was
though.
some really good ones. It was originally it was an Italian film. It was originally released as Ecology of Crime, which is a pretty good title. But it was also called Chain Reaction, or Reazione a Catena, I think is the Italian. But it was also called Carnage and Bloodbath, and my favorite horror title ever, Twitch of the Death Nerve.
Yes, that's a good one.
It's so good.
It's a good one.
So good. It is based around the ownership of this bay somewhere in Italy, probably in like
Presumably,
northern
yeah.
Italy. The countess who owns it is murdered at the beginning of the film, and then that starts a chain reaction, which is why it was called Chain Reaction, I guess, of a bunch of people who all kind of have claims of ownership over the lake, just murdering each other.
Yeah.
The plot's it's not particularly difficult to follow for the first half, roughly. For the first half, it's sort of standard slasher stuff, because it doesn't go too deep in the plot. You kind of get a bunch of different characters introduced really sort of vaguely, and then a bunch of people get murdered. The second half, it really goes into this like conspiracy almost of the ownership, and the countess had an illegitimate son, and she was murdered by her husband who was actually working with that guy, and that guy's now actually working with the son to kill off that guy, and it becomes a bit of a mess towards the end, unfortunately.
I did find it quite difficult to follow. Yeah. As you say, about halfway through, it starts to get a bit more deep into the plot, and it doesn't help that a lot of the male characters look very similar.
Yeah.
they're not. None of them, I don't think, are particularly well-known actors.
There pretty much aren't any particularly well-known actors in the film, other than the one I recognized, Renata, who is the sort of...
Oh yeah,
she
was a Bond girl.
She was a Bond girl. Claudine Auger. She was Domino in Thunderball.
Yeah.
She's like the stepdaughter of the Countess. She's like the daughter of the Countess's husband that murdered her. And now she's like... Now that her dad's dead, or has gone missing and is presumed dead, she believes that she should be inheriting the lake. So her and her husband are going around trying to they're spying on everybody, and she's very menacing. She's not really like the villain, because there's not really a single protagonist or antagonist in the film.
I
which
guess
is a little
her
strange.
and her husband are probably the closest thing to the villains.
Yeah,
arguably.
yeah. In that very kind of soap opera villains type
Yeah.
sense, they're not really like front and center doing a bunch of evil stuff. Like they're not even the ones that are committing the murders for most of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that about halfway through, it gets to the point where they're really introduced, and we find out what's going on with them, and they start mercilessly killing people in order to get to this fortune that they believe they deserve. Yeah, so who else have we got character-wise? So we've got Renata, and we've got her husband.
We've got the tourists, I guess.
There's a group of tourists. I think it's two American guys, and then there's like a French girl and a German girl.
Yeah.
Who are traveling together on like a road trip through Italy, I guess. They stop off near the bay they find like an abandoned nightclub, and they go and they kind of hang about in there for a little bit. They then they just break into somebody's house.
Yep.
They just straight up break into someone's house. And we'll get to him because he's actually a named character. But they just break into someone's house. The German girl, Brunhilde, of course she's called Brunhilde, goes for a swim in the bay and finds a dead body.
I need to stop you there, sorry. It's such a funny trope in films when the pretty girl goes down to the beach, strips off, and then goes swimming in the water.
Yep.
Because that doesn't happen in real life.
No, it does not.
It just doesn't.
No.
But in every other horror film, that happens.
Yep.
And it's just so funny.
Yeah. It happens a lot in a very specific franchise of horror films that this was a huge influence for.
It's very true.
You watch this film and you're like, man, this is just Friday the 13th, but 10 years older.
Yep.
This is such a Friday the 13th film. And it's really interesting. I will talk about that specifically at the end because that was something I really loved about it. But yeah, so back to the plot. The four of them are kicking about. Brunhilde finds this body, starts panicking, tries to run back to her friends, gets killed. Mm-hmm. This is the first particularly brutal murder. She gets killed by is it a bill hook? It's like sort of a curved.
I don't know. Is
blade.
it used for fishing? I think
it's used in fishing, which is a bit of a clue as to who the murderer turns out to be. Gets her throat cut. Then one of the other guys in this house that they've broken into, one of the American guys, opens the door and gets the bill hook to the face, and that's
quite brutal.
It's a brutal kill. That's a very brutal kill. It was that point when I was kind of like, okay, cool, this is why this was a video nasty, because it's like for 1971 especially, that was particularly...
The makeup's not bad as
violent.
well. Like,
no, it's
it
not.
actually, like, full on, like, they've got this carved hook, like attached to his face with prosthetics. Yeah. And it actually does look like it has just gone deep into his skull.
It looks real. Yeah. And then there's another shot. They do the thing, another comparison to Friday the 13th. They talked about in that, I think it's specifically in the first film, there's a girl that gets killed with an axe. She's like in the showers and she gets killed with the axe. Mm-hmm. And there's a shot where you just see the axe go up in the air and it like bumps off of like the light fitting, bumps off the light bulb. And it's actually mirroring a shot that was in Bay of Blood. But they talked about Tom Savini, who did the special effects for Friday the 13th.
I love Tom Savini.
We love Tom Savini. He's great. He talked about how they specifically put that shot in to make it look real. Like, this is a real axe. And then obviously the axe that actually hits the person in the face isn't a real axe. But they have this one shot of a real axe to make you see how real it is. And they do that here as well. Like, you see the blade, and then you see, like, this prosthetic that he's got on his face that's obviously just, like, the carved away bit of the blade that's stuck on with all the fake blood. And then after that, there's another shot where obviously it's a fake head, but a real blade, when the blade gets pulled out. But you only see it quite briefly. And it's that combination of those three shots really makes it feel like a real blade going into a real head.
It was really, I was really quite impressed with it.
Yeah. And then immediately after that, another kill that's mirrored in Friday the 13th, this time in Friday the 13th Part 2, famously. The two remaining tourists are in bed together having sex, and the killer comes up behind them with a spear and spears them through the bed in one of them, and then out, and then in the other one, and out and down through the bottom of the bed.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but all I could think about with that is the thick of it quote. If you remember.
I don't know what one you're talking about.
He says something like, "If you talk to me like that again, all you're going to hear is the thump of a harpoon in your thorax."
Yeah, that's what it is.
And it was a brutal kill, but I was giggling to myself because I was like, "That's all I could think."
A harpoon through the thorax. That's what it is. Then yeah, like these are really the main kills. Like, people talk about this as being another proto-slasher, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago. But it's a lot of the film doesn't have many of those slasher tropes, but this is like classic slasher stuff.
Oh yeah,
this segment with these tourists getting bumped off was like, this was like the blueprint for the like summer camp slashers that we got in 10 years time, the Friday the 13th and Sleepaway Camp and The Burning and stuff like that. And it's really good. It's a fun watch. I enjoyed watching it. After that, we get back into all of the stuff with all of the various other characters. So we've got there's the guy who he's called Paul and or Paolo, because they've all got Italian names, but then the English dub they call them the English names, but they also sometimes still call them the Italian names. It's a bit weird.
Is it Paul and his wife?
Paul and his wife. So he's an entomologist.
Yeah.
Not an etymologist.
No.
He's an entomologist. So he like studies bugs, and he has a bug collection. And his wife's like a fortune teller. She's like a weird goth fortune teller. She looks like Robert Smith.
She kind of does. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, so it's like the two of them have a bit of a thing. They really clearly hate each other. There's the character Simon, who is a fisherman who lives on the bay. He's a fisherman. That's how people got murdered with a billhook. He's the one that turns out to be the Countess's illegitimate son, who's been committing all of the murders. There's the guy who's like is he like a lawyer or a real estate developer type thing, and his secretary that he's having an affair with.
Yeah.
So he's getting involved. There's the two of them that convinced the Countess's husband to murder her at the beginning, so that they could then buy the property from him, not expecting him to also get murdered immediately.
Are you following?
Are you following? Because it's not easy to follow. I think that's pretty much it. Well, then you've got Renata and her husband, who we mentioned.
Yeah.
And also they've got two kids who are not in the
film. They're not in the film
except
a lot.
Very briefly.
They kind of wave good. The Renata and her husband, I can't remember the guy's name. Albert?
Could be Albert. I think it is
I can't remember
Albert.
which one it is. They leave in the middle of the night and leave the kids in the camper van.
Mm-hmm.
They're obviously camping nearby, I guess. Yep. I don't know. And then they make an appearance at the end of the film as well.
Yes, they do. I mean, I think that's all the characters.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm missing anybody.
No, I think that's everyone.
And yeah, pretty much everybody in the second half wind up just sort of killing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Albert murders Paul because he's going to call the police because he suspects that someone else is in danger. Then they've told Renata and Albert about about Simon being the Countess's son. So then Simon murders Paul's wife, and then she gets beheaded. It's quite a
I love that
quite a good
shot, by the way.
quite a good
I
beheading.
love that when they drop it like cuts away. Like you get like a very brief shot of the head coming off and the stump and a bit of blood.
Yeah.
And then it kind of cuts away to someone dropping a vase.
Yeah.
And I loved that shot. That was so
It was
crisp.
good.
I really liked
good.
that.
Yeah, and then Simon turns out to be the murderer, and then Simon murders the secretary and then gets murdered by the real estate developer, and then in turn the real estate developer gets murdered by Albert. So then Albert and Renata are the two people left, and then it's the end of the film, and they're like, oh great, we've survived and we've gotten rid of all the evidence, and now we have the deed and we own the bay and it's going to be great. And then their kids are like, hey, look over here, and they turn around and the kids have got a shotgun and they shoot them dead thinking that the gun's a toy, and then they say like, oh, our parents are really good at playing dead, let's go play in the bay, and then they skip off, and then the end of the like credits start to roll over just the two kids just stood at the bay just playing, not realizing that they've murdered their parents. It's not a great ending.
See, if their kids had been in it for longer than literally a shot of them standing out, like looking out the window of the camper van, or there had been some kind of indication that they had access to a shotgun, I wouldn't have hated it as much. But it just totally comes out of left field.
It really does. It really does. And like, didn't love the ending. It definitely peters off. I think the first half, like I love the opening. Right, I'll talk about how much I love the opening in a second. I love the opening. The first sort of half of the film after that is pretty good. That's when we get all the sort of slashery stuff. Then it just delves into like this weird conspiracy, and everyone's just sort of murdering each other one by one. It's all very murky. Like you can't tell who you're supposed to be rooting for, if anybody. You can't really tell who's doing the murdering. Like even after you find out who the mysterious killer is, it's still very ambiguous as to who's actually killing who. Which means they then need to have a lot of this exposition of like, oh, I just killed them, come on, let's go, and then they get murdered as well, and it's like, not great. And then I felt like the ending's really pretty rubbish. But so the opening, the reason that I love the opening so much is that this is coming off the back of, like, Mario Bava is a very well-known director, like one of the cornerstones of horror cinema, especially like European horror cinema. He did like Black Sunday and Black Sabbath and a handful of Giallo films before then, which were very popular, including Blood and Black Lace, which is a really good one. I don't know if you've seen Blood and Black Lace.
I've not.
It's very good. We can cover it at some point.
That's the one with Michael Caine, right?
No.
Which one's that?
Oh, you think of Dressed to Kill?
Yes.
Dressed to Kill, that's the one with... Is
that a Dario Argento?
No, it was Brian De Palma.
Oh, De Palma. I get all these guys confused.
Yeah.
I can never remember which one's which.
No, Blood and Black Lace was like... It's like textbook Giallo. It's like it's set in a house where a bunch of models live, so it's all like these like glamorous, beautiful women, and there's like a guy wears like a black suit and black gloves, and he's got like a white mask that just covers his face, so he's got this like blank, featureless face. And he kills them with like the straight razor. It's like proper like classic Giallo stuff.
I know the name. I don't think I've seen it.
It's good. It's a good watch. And obviously with him doing that, and then the opening, we see the Countess is in our house. She's kind of kicking about. She's looking sad. She's looking out over the bay. And then she gets murdered, and you don't see by who. You just see the gloves, and it's like she gets strangled. He like puts a rope around her neck and then strangles her to make it look like a suicide. And it's like the black gloves, and it's all very shot in a way that you can't see who's doing it.
A lot of close-ups.
Which is, very classic Giallo stuff. And I was like, cool, so this is like the kind of film that we're getting in for. And then they immediately show you who the killer was. And that it's, well, you don't know until a little bit later because there's no dialogue yet, but you immediately see the killer's face. And then he gets killed immediately. Someone else who you don't see comes up behind him and stabs him to death. And I really loved that, because it's like Mario Bava telling the audience, like, he's setting up the Giallo elements of, like, this is a classic Giallo film, and then immediately pulling the rug out from under you and going, no, I'm killing Giallo films, we're moving on, we're doing a new kind of film now. And that's, like, kicking off slashers. This is, like, the transition between Giallo films and
It's a cool way of looking at it. Yeah, I didn't really think about that, but that's... Yeah.
And, like, I just loved the opening scene for that. I feel like that must have been... Maybe I'm just getting that, and I'm just doing...
Makes sense.
Writing my English essays and just pulling shit out of my ass. But that was really the feeling that I got, was this was an intentional kind of nod to the audience of, like, you know Giallo films. This isn't a Giallo film. We're going past that. We're doing something different. And you're not going to know where I'm going with it, what I'm doing with it. I'm keeping you on your toes. And I love that about it.
Yeah.
Something else I loved about the opening is that the killer plants a fake suicide note for the Countess. And they go into detail a little bit later on, but I noticed immediately when he put the note down. Did you notice the date that was on the top of the suicide note?
No.
The 13th of February.
Was it actually?
Yeah. That's my birthday. Actually made in my notes. 13 Febbraio. Il mio compleanno. Yeah. I thought it was fun.
We need to remember and celebrate next year.
Yeah, celebrate Bay of Blood Day on my birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, in the end, I was disappointed by it, because I think the first half, like the opening especially, but then the first half just set it up to be really good. I was really enjoying it. And then by the second half, I, like, lost track, and I couldn't keep up with the hype for the film anymore, because I was like, I just had to acknowledge that the plot becomes incomprehensible, and it's not particularly well made towards the end. It feels very unfocused, and it feels like they didn't really know what they were wanting to do. Like, it's obvious they wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a clear idea of what that should have been.
It's almost... It's not farcical, because it's not played for laughs. It does take itself very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But there is that element of, like, all this back and forward and who's who, that it does totally lend itself to the likes of, you know, like Clue or something, you know. Or I was thinking more recently, like Knives Out.
Yeah, you mentioned, like, the Knives Out.
Knives Out, I feel, has a lot of influence from this film.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, just this idea of, like, there's this inheritance going, there's a lot of murder and intrigue and who's who, and you don't really know.
Yeah.
Like, that, you know, Knives Out totally could have been a remake of this film.
Yeah.
If it had gone
a lot darker,
heavier
and had
into
a bunch
the
of
slasher.
murders.
Yeah. But just that kind of not lighthearted, but more lighthearted approach to these kind of murder mystery things.
Yeah.
It felt like it could have been that, but because it took itself so seriously, it kind of, it waned a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely has that kind of played out whodunit vibe, which wasn't uncommon for Giallos, and I think that was just him probably. That was probably Bava just being sort of stuck in the kind of films that he had made before.
Yeah,
is that there should be, like, that murder mystery element, but then it becomes very difficult to keep that up after a while, and it falls into that kind of generic, like, you can't really trust anybody, but that just means that there's not really a protagonist, so there's not really anyone to follow, so it feels very directionless.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, the fact that it's just a product of its time as well, I feel like there is that element of just the dialogue's not fantastic, the direction's a bit jumpy in places, that it's not just the plot that's a bit convoluted, it's actually the way that it's done that makes things even more difficult to follow. I agree with you. I don't know, I felt the first half of the film is very... I was going to say generic slasher, right? But it's not, because it was one of the first to do it.
Yeah.
So it can't be generic. So I kind of gave it props for that, but it did take quite a while for the actual plot of the film to kick in.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about saying like it's a bit directionless. I think there's two aspects to the lack of direction. The first half of the film, just we had no idea what was going on, and then the second half we had too much going on.
Yeah.
And that unbalance just did not complement each other well at all. But you were saying you liked the first half more. I didn't.
No.
I found it quite boring up until the first kill, which is maybe like 25, 30 minutes in.
There's a lot of build up before the first kill.
There's a lot of stuff. A lot of nothing, really.
Yeah.
Especially following the tourists, who then get killed off at once.
Yeah.
And we never see them again. Well, obviously, because they're dead. But like,
they don't have any relation to the other characters.
They
were just there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the kills were cool, and I liked that, but I kind of wanted a bit more plot in the first half.
Mm.
So when we first started to get it, and we were introduced to the characters, I was a bit more on board with the film.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until like the last 10 minutes where it does like a couple of flashback sequences and really kind of spells out the film, or as best as it can, tries to spell it out for you, that I was kind of like, I almost wish they didn't do that.
Yeah.
I almost wish it was like totally unfollowable.
Yeah.
Rather than like trying to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know. It was a weird one. It was kind of, it had a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing that I really liked about it is that you can see so much in it that has led to really great things in later films.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it deserves a lot of credit for that. But unfortunately, that doesn't really mean that it's particularly good to watch now.
No.
Looking back, with the hindsight of, 40 years of slasher films, going back 50 years to a film like this that influenced those films, there's a lot lacking. It's like, an alpha build of a slasher film.
Mm.
It's got a lot of rough edges that have been gradually, worked on and improved on over time. And it's weird going back to, the way it was before.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we do the scores before you go into your Friday the 13th comparisons?
Sure. I mean, I don't really have many further Friday the 13th comparisons, to be totally honest.
Just because Friday the 13th leads a good segue into our second film.
Yeah?
Don't you think?
I guess.
A little bit.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Okay, so what did you give it then in the end?
I gave it a 3.
Okay.
A lot of that is because of the influence that it had on other films, like I'm saying. I loved the opening. I liked a lot of the kills around the tourists.
Mm-hmm.
And I quite liked a lot of the imagery. There's some of it that was quite gruesome and quite disgusting in a very fun way.
The body in the boat.
The body in a boat. That's exactly
octopus.
What I was thinking of. There's after they find the Countess's husband's body. This is the body that was chucked in the bay. Simon finds it, even though he was the one that put it there in the first place. Simon finds it and he has it in his fishing boat, and there's like a squid or an octopus like crawling across his face. This kind of decomposing body that's been in the bay for a week or so, and it's pretty gross. But like, I liked that. It had that effect of, like, you don't get an awful lot of that from films that are 50 years old.
Yeah. Because it's not explicitly a gruesome image, but just the idea of it is quite like,
it is pretty horrible.
It makes you squirm a little bit.
Yeah. But yeah, like I say, the plot falls off in the second half. I thought the ending was pretty rubbish. I don't know if the acting is necessarily terrible. There's definitely a lot lost in that it was dubbed.
It was redubbed, yeah.
Well, this was one a lot of Italian films would do. I always think of Suspiria when I think of films doing this, is that the film was, as far as I know, I could be wrong, the film was actually shot in multiple languages. Like, you've got actors from different countries with different native languages. They knew that it was going to be dubbed over in different places and redistributed it, so they didn't even, I don't even know if they recorded sound when they were shooting it. I know they didn't with like something like Suspiria. So the different actors are speaking different languages, which makes it quite disjointed. And I think for something like Suspiria, it works well because that's such a weird film. It has a lot of this weird ethereal energy to it. But Bay of Blood, which is much more of a kind of murder mystery slasher, doesn't have that weird supernatural element going, so it doesn't carry across well, having that strange feeling of the dub being a little bit off. It just feels a bit distracting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of unavoidable for films being made in other languages.
I mean, it is what it is. You know, I wouldn't like strictly mark it down just for that, but I know what you mean. It does have that a bit of a negative impact on your enjoyment watching it. Yeah, I wasn't miles behind you. I gave it 2.5 out of 5. There was a lot to like about the film. Like you say, the kills were great. I think even beyond like the beheading one, I thought that was brilliant.
Good.
I loved that. I thought it was fantastic. And there was some of the scenes. The scene where Renata gets locked in the bathroom and is fighting off one of the guys. I can't remember which one it is. And she like stabs him in the leg, and it's all very claustrophobic. There was a lot of elements of like that, like you say, like the close-up shots, and the direction was pretty great overall. So yeah, there was a lot to love about it, but it felt so disjointed plot-wise. Like there was a lot of nothing, and then there was too much of the other thing, and then that ending was just totally out of nowhere, which was just frustrating. But like you say, the influence that it's clearly had, particularly on Friday the 13th, but on other films as well, is notable. Yeah. Even for someone who's not like going back and critiquing the film, it's obvious that it's had that influence. So yeah, you got to give it points for that as well. Decent film, decent watch.
Not bad.
Didn't hate it. Ready to move on?
Yes.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker.
Yep.
Yeah, my segue was a little bit from Friday the 13th with Mrs. Voorhees.
Yes.
There's definitely elements of that in the film as well.
Yeah.
Although, when was...
This would have been after Friday the 13th.
It was 1980, wasn't it?
This was 81.
This was 81, but...
Friday the 13th was 80, yeah.
80, yeah. So slightly after. But it follows a similar-ish theme, I guess, of the overbearing mother/aunt on the protagonist of the story. I guess protagonist, kind of. Yeah. He's a bit useless, but whatever. Okay, so Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, 1981, as we said, directed by William Asher, who hilariously directed the majority of I Love Lucy.
Wild.
And the majority of Bewitched as well.
Wow. Okay, cool. Didn't know that.
And also did such films as Bikini Beach, Muscle Beach Party, Beach Blanket Bingo, and How to Stuff a Wild Bikini.
Oh.
I need to stick those on my to-watch list.
My favourites.
They sound fascinating. Yeah, the film follows Billy. The opening sequence we get is Billy being, as a toddler, being left with his auntie Cheryl as his parents go off for a trip or whatever for a few weeks. Their trip is cut very short after they lose control of the car, the brakes don't work, and they plough into the back of a lorry in this very overly dramatic, definitely not realistic sequence where there's like cars all over the road and they didn't just drive into an embankment, they just plow into this truck, and then he gets beheaded, and then she flies off the cliff in the car.
Yep.
Very dramatic, very silly, very unrealistic, but hilarious nonetheless. So Billy is then raised by his Aunt Cheryl. We cut to 14 years later, I think.
14.
So he's 17, 18 at this point.
He's 16, about to turn 17.
Thank you. 16, about to turn 7. His birthday's...
I specifically made a note of how old he was.
Okay. You'll find out why. So he turns 17 sort of 10 minutes into the film. But we're very, very quickly introduced to Aunt Cheryl and the type of character she is. She's very strange. She's very overbearing, but not in like a comforting way.
Yeah.
I don't know if overbearing is ever comforting, but not in like the normal way that a mother would be. She's very, like, she comes and wakes up Billy by like tickling his chest and like rubbing him, and it's really
she's very handsy.
It's very strange. And very difficult to watch in places as well. Cheryl's played by Susan Tyrrell, I should say as well, who was an Academy Award nominee.
Yeah.
Not surprising, to be honest.
Very good actress.
She was very good in this.
She genuinely gave. I think I wrote. Hang on. What? Let me get my exact note for what I said. Susan Tyrrell gives a genuinely inspired performance as an absolute fucking nutcase.
It's very succinct.
She's
very accurate.
It's an incredibly good performance, but it's.
Yeah. Fun fact about her: she dated Hervé Villechaize, who played Knick Knack in The Man with the Golden Gun.
There you go.
Yeah,
and he was Tattoo in Fantasy Island.
There
you go.
Yeah,
that's fun.
So she plays Cheryl. She's very unsettling every time she's on screen. Billy, I forgot to write down the actor's name for Billy.
There weren't many other famous actors.
He retired from acting quite quickly. Jimmy McNichol was his name. Who was decent, I thought, as Billy, playing the sort of typical teenage boy. You know, he's got his girlfriend Julie, and he's on the basketball team, and he's, you know, kind of a jock, but not like a bully. Yeah, you know, he's an athlete, I guess. We've got young Bill Paxton on the basketball team as well. Yes. Very young Bill Paxton, who's not in it much.
I love just Bill Paxton.
He bullies Billy a little bit.
He's pretty hot.
Yeah.
He's pretty hot.
Yeah.
I thought Bill Paxton was pretty hot.
Yeah. He's not in it much, annoyingly.
He's not. It would have been nice if he was in it a bit more.
And yeah, we're kind of gradually introduced to Billy's life. He's got his girlfriend, he's got his sports team, he's good friends with the coach of the basketball team, who's quite a significant player in the film as well. And he's about to be scouted for college. I never understand quite how the American system works, but the way I understand it is basically scouts occasionally come to like college games, college sports,
high school games,
yeah. And then towards the end of the year, they'll like pick the best for a scholarship to college.
Yeah,
that's basically right?
Yeah, like college. But like college sports is a lot bigger in the States than it is here.
Yeah.
So like college football, college basketball makes the universities a lot of money,
and they basically pay for the scholarship.
They give you
right?
like full ride scholarships, which is what they talk about in this. Because he's like, I couldn't afford to go to college, but they're like, we'll give you if you play on our basketball team, you will make us a bunch of money, so we will pay for your tuition, so you can come for free.
Yeah. So he's aiming to get scouted, and Cheryl is not happy about this at all. Initially, anyway, she's very upset. She doesn't want him to leave. And poor Billy just ends up getting caught up in Cheryl's. I don't know if it was her plan all along, but the next day the TV repairman comes in, and she kind of very forcefully comes on to him. He rebuffs her because we later found out he's gay. And she kills him.
Yep.
Very aggressively and very unemotionally, just straight up kills him. Billy witnesses this and it kind of steers the whole plot of the local detective, the lieutenant, I think he is.
Yeah.
Kind of gunning for Billy more than anything.
Yeah.
Cheryl claims that he tried to the TV guy Pete, can't remember his name, tried to rape her, and that's why she killed him. But the detective assumes that Billy is gay.
Yeah.
And that he was the one that was getting raped or whatever.
Yeah.
And
it turns out that the TV repairman was involved with the coach.
Yes.
Who is also gay. So then he thinks that it's like a love triangle.
Yeah.
He thinks that Billy and the coach are having an affair, so Billy murdered the TV guy.
The cop is super bigoted. And honestly,
he's the worst.
I actually found that much more difficult to watch than Cheryl for most of the film.
I don't know if I would say more difficult to watch, but definitely also difficult to watch.
Like, he goes to the high school and confronts the coach, and basically they find like a wedding ring, or not a wedding ring, but like a ring. With the coach's name on it, and obviously figures out that he's gay, and he basically says to the coach, like, you're a pedophile, leave, quit your job and leave, or I will come back and kill you.
Yeah. And
it's nuts. Like, it's so frustrating to watch, not only because he's such an awful character, but because this was like 1981.
Yeah.
That's probably not out of the ordinary,
not
that
at all.
People would believe that and have those feelings. I mentioned last week when we were first talking about the film that one of the notes on this film is that it has a sort of positive gay role model in the coach.
Yeah.
And honestly, that does shine through.
Yeah.
Throughout the film, he is like, being gay is not like played for laughs. It's not like his defining characteristic.
Yeah.
And he is a very sympathetic character throughout.
Yeah.
I only wish that it wasn't the focus of so much hatred on the end of, well, not just that cop, but the other cops as well. And even Cheryl a little bit as well.
Yeah.
She's kind of like, oh, he's an evil man. He's a sick man. So, yeah, it's kind of positive representation, but in a bad situation. So it's kind of... I didn't really know how to feel about that come the end of the film. Anyway, Cheryl... goes a bit off the deep end, or starts to go a bit off the deep end. She starts poisoning Billy with an unknown drug.
Some kind of poison.
Causing him to faint at the basketball game. And she then starts sort of nursing him back to health and basically just convincing him to stay. She clears out the attic room, which had loads of old boxes and stuff, and has this like very child-oriented room, all these kids' toys, and it's very creepy. And Billy's like visibly uncomfortable as well, which is one thing that I really liked about the film. It didn't play up that he had no idea what was going on, and that only we as the audience see her as creepy. Like, he was like, from
pretty much from this point,
from this point
very
on,
uncomfortable.
He's very suspicious. He starts snooping on her and finds out that she's like hiding old documents and stuff. But I guess the next big thing is him finding out that she's actually his mum.
Yeah.
They find a document that she was with her boyfriend, who she's been chatting to in the basement. She's been kind of talking off screen
to the
shrine of the boyfriend, and he died under mysterious circumstances. And then his adoptive parents, I guess, adopted him because she was so distraught by the husband, the boyfriend dying, in quotes, that they adopted him, and then we kind of were led to believe that she wanted him back, and so she cut the brakes on the car at the start, which killed his parents. And And from there, Billy's like, right, what is going on? What is my life right now? And he tries to figure it out. So Julie comes over to distract Cheryl while he goes up. I think maybe this is when I think this is actually the point where he finds the document.
Yeah.
But there's a couple other scenes where he's kind of rummaging and whatnot. But Cheryl knocks out Julia with a meat hammer and then chucks her in the basement. We've got neighbor Margie, who comes into the mix as well. She's popped around for a casserole or whatever.
Poor Margie.
I
She
love
was
Margie.
nice.
She just got caught up, man. Poor
She's
thing.
like, she really like tried. She's kind of sort of playing up the tropes of like the nosy neighbor type of character.
Yeah.
But then when she realizes that something is wrong, she like steps into action to make sure that Billy's safe.
Yeah.
Even though this is like her friend, like her closest friend is the one that's being weird. And it's nice. She was a nice character.
She sees that something's wrong and she's kind of eavesdropping and trying to make sure that Billy's okay because Billy's all drugged up and lying in bed and can't move properly.
Mm-hmm.
And then she finds Julie's camera in the cupboard.
Yeah.
After the police have phoned and asked about Julie's whereabouts because she's gone missing, Margie's like, "Oh, but you told us you didn't know where Julie was, and you said earlier that she came round, but then she left." And she's clearly like cottoned on that something's wrong, and she's kind of snooping around the house. It's really funny. She's like hiding behind doors and like opening the door and shutting it, pretending that she leaves. It's kind of it felt very like, I don't know, Scooby-Doo.
It is a little bit. It's a little Scooby-Doo.
But at this point, Cheryl's kind of like full mask off. She's just like lost it completely.
At this point, I made the note: she should be going for her bachelor's degree in batshitology at Cuckoo State University.
Spot on. Yeah, spot on.
And also, how can someone who is already so insane have gone even further off the deep end?
It's wild. Like it is proper like a sliding scale.
Yeah,
across the film, she does get progressively more.
She like cuts all of her hair
psychotic.
off and everything.
Yeah. And honestly, Susan Terrell does a great job of it.
Yeah,
she really like makes you believe that she is losing it completely. So at this point, Billy's trying to escape and trying to leave, and we're kind of all these plots are kind of converging. The other police officer, not the homophobic cop, although he is also a bit homophobic.
He like doesn't believe that Billy's involved.
No,
he's like figured out the truth.
He thinks that Cheryl's involved because of like the newspaper clippings.
He like does some digging and finds out that there's suspicious stuff going on with Cheryl.
So he wants to investigate more.
I don't know if you maybe recognized the actor, because I thought I recognized him at first and I looked him up. I didn't actually write down the actor's name, but he was in Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Oh, really?
He was Mr. Sims, the guy that owns the shop.
Okay.
In Silent Night, Deadly Night, like the toy shop owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another cracking film.
That's a good film.
Yeah. So yeah, and he's kind of investigating. So he's coming round because Julie's parents have phoned the police. She's missing. So he thinks obviously something's wrong with Cheryl. So he goes to investigate the house. And at this point, Julie's also waking up in the basement, and she finds the decomposing remains and pickled head of Cheryl's old boyfriend in the basement, which leads me to believe, has Billy never been in the basement in 14 years?
I guess not.
Improbable, but fine, whatever. Yeah.
That's where she keeps all of her pickled vegetables.
Oh my god, yeah.
Next to the head of her ex-boyfriend.
It was very psycho. That reveal was very, you could see the influence there.
Yeah. Going into the basement and the like decomposing body and the scream and like batting the
lights, the little light on a string. So this is it's all kind of going on at once. Margie tries to leave and escape, but she gets got. She gets disemboweled by Cheryl, and then Julie tries to escape. The police officer comes in and he gets his hand cut off and then his head chopped off.
Yeah.
Trying to find Julie, and then Julie gets supposedly drowned in the nearby pond, conveniently located pond.
Yeah.
By Cheryl before she finally comes back into the house to deal with Billy. And at this point, Billy's like, mate, I've had a week of it. I'm done, mate. I'm done.
Yeah.
He stabs her with it's like a letter opener. Mm-hmm. He gets her all while she's like fondling him and kissing him on the mouth, and it's all
gross.
It's very gross. It's not nice. What is it she says? Like, oh, I'll be your girlfriend now.
It's like, yeah, he's like, you just killed my girlfriend, and she's like, I'm your girlfriend now.
Yeah, mate,
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
But he finally gets her. He gets the fire poker and gets her.
There's a good jump scare that like properly got me. Is
really?
When you think she's like, it's that obvious trope where
you got a double tap, mate.
You got a double tap. You think she's down because she's been stabbed and she's on the ground, and then Billy gets up, and then she like jumps back up suddenly and screams. And that got me gave me a proper fright.
So he finally gets her, and he phones the coach for help, because the coach has kind of said throughout the film, like, look, if you need anything, give me a call, I'll be there. And at this point I was like, oh no, he's gonna get Night of the Living Dead, isn't he?
Yeah.
At the end of the film, I was like, I really don't want to watch this. I don't want to see that happen.
Yeah,
it's just horrible. And right enough, at the end, Coach comes in and he's, standing over Cheryl and Billy, and he's helping Billy out, get cleaned up and everything. And the homophobic cop rocks up, and of course, what does he assume? He assumes that it was Billy and the coach that had done everything, despite the fact that Julie is alive and comes in and says, no, it was Cheryl. She's the one who killed the cop and tried to kill me. I saw it happen.
Yeah.
The cop's still like, nah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill these gays.
Yeah.
And I was watching this like, oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. I almost turned it off. I was like, I can't
watch it.
This is, give me the gore, give me the like jump scares and whatnot, but this is hard to watch, man. This is rough. Thankfully, Coach manages to wrestle the gun away from the cop, and Billy shoots the bastard dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, good, fuck that cop.
Absolutely fuck that cop. He was the worst.
There was part of me that was like, oh man, Billy's going to get in trouble for this. But most of me was like, yeah, fuck that guy.
I was
good.
The whole way through this film, I was like, I cannot wait until he dies.
Yeah.
Oh, I really hope he gets killed.
It was great.
And then he does.
Great. And then the film ends, and we get a little postscript text that says, like, the jury found Billy not guilty on reasons of temporary insanity. Then he went to college and lived happily ever after. I was like, oh, cool, okay.
It really cracked me up when the epilogue comes up. It's literally just that one paragraph that's basically like, yeah, he just like got away with killing a cop, and then they gave him a scholarship. Whatever, who gives a shit? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, good for him.
You know what? Good for Billy, man.
He had a rough week.
Him and his girlfriend just go off and they go to... It's somewhere shit. It's like they go to fucking Denver State University or something. Yeah. Oh no, Denver's not a state. Whatever. They go to like Colorado State University or something.
Yeah.
It's something ridiculous.
Yeah, it was wild. Honestly, I preferred it over the Bay of Blood ending, only because it actually made me laugh.
It did make me laugh.
Like ridiculous
it did make me laugh.
Was.
This was one of two bits in this film that got a real out loud reaction out of me. The ending really made me laugh, and there's a bit around that shortly after we find out that Cheryl is actually Billy's mum, and he's like drugged and kind of half conscious, and she's like feeding him milk, this milk that she's poisoned, and he's like kind of resisting, and she like spills it all over his face and down his neck, and she licks the milk off of his neck.
Oh yeah.
And that made me I was sitting watching this film by myself, and that made me out loud go, oh god. It was so gross.
It was. Yeah, no, it was horrible. Yeah. It was not an easy watch,
It
honestly. Not for the reasons that it became a video nasty as well. Because I imagine at the time, a lot of the language that was used, particularly like the homophobic language that was used, and the general sentiment of that was probably, as I say, not out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
For 81, unfortunately, was probably not out of the ordinary. So I imagine that aspect of the film did not play into the fact that it was a video nasty at all, really. As far as like gore and kills go, it's not that bad.
No,
really.
There's not an awful lot.
The kill at the start, the dad in the car gets like properly like beheaded by this big, like it's like scaffolding on the back of a truck.
It's like a big log.
Is that a big log?
I think it's just a big
That was a
log.
metal pipe, but yeah, it's like the dummy in there like properly like neck snaps off.
It looks very fake.
It does,
But like, yeah, the neck snapping backwards and this log hitting, and then you just see like the blood sprayed in the rest of the car. I thought it was a pretty good kill.
I thought it was pretty good.
Pretty
Yeah.
gnarly.
But the other ones, like Cheryl's kills, weren't particularly brutal. Like she cuts off the cop's hand and it's very fake and doesn't look that real. She cuts off his head like off screen, like it cuts away. She drowns Julie in the pond and she doesn't actually die anyway. And the Margie, the neighbor, kind of gets cut across the chest and disemboweled, but not really.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad. The only one that I guess could be excessive is her kill of the Pete or Paul or whoever, the TV repairman.
Yeah.
Which is quite a lot of like blood. And
There's a lot
stuff.
of blood.
But yeah, overall, I don't know. Like I imagine the theme of like the incestuous mother is probably what played into the rating of it. But it was uncomfortable, but I've seen worse.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of films out there that are a lot worse than that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like sort of drama films. There are drama films that are worse than that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Think of things like Lolita.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're not horror films, but they were never video nasties, to the best of my knowledge, anyway. And I would argue that those themes are a lot worse than what was actually shown here. So, yeah, I don't know. It didn't shock me as much as I thought it would.
There were definitely bits of it that grossed me out. But I didn't find it as difficult to watch as I thought I was going to.
Yeah. There was a lot of discomfort watching it, but nothing that was like viscerally shocking. Yeah. I wouldn't say. Yeah. How did you rank it?
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I found it, like I say, I did find it difficult to watch, but I didn't think it was poorly made particularly. I thought a lot of the acting was pretty good, especially from Susan Terrell. The plot isn't incredible, and a lot of the themes and the stuff that it's exploring is pretty uncomfortable, but it's not done too badly.
Yeah.
One of the things I really liked, I mentioned that Cheryl is, when she's poisoning Billy, she's doing it by poisoning milk. She's like feeding him poisoned milk. And that's like the perfect example of this like twisted, murderous sort of inversion of the kind of like oedipal thing. Like that overbearing mother literally poisoning the milk you are feeding to your child is like such a great bit of imagery. So like I can't say that it's all bad just because it's kind of uncomfortable. It's one of these sort of taboo things. It's difficult to watch, but it's done well in this film, you know? The homophobia makes it difficult to watch. I think it's a little weird. It suffers a bit from being split across those two kind of things, like exploring the sort of homophobic angle of the cop and the relationship between the coach and the TV repair guy and how that all factors into it.
Yeah.
With Cheryl's obsession with Billy.
I think it's
Yeah.
more as a product of its time. I think it's probably more the side plot with the coach and the love triangle was probably written just as that.
Yeah.
Like as a love triangle. No, it wasn't a love triangle, but like it was written as if that is what the cop thinks it is.
Yeah.
And the homophobia was literally just a product of its time, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas now, when we're going back and watching it, that is as shocking, if not more in some cases, than the actual theme of the movie.
Yeah.
But it's only in retrospect that we can see that, really. Whereas at the time, it was probably just treated as this kind of side plot, like, oh, he's gay, therefore he's evil kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is what, as I say, unfortunately, a lot of people did just believe and still do, sadly. But
yeah.
so yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think it's probably a lot more in retrospect that
Yeah, probably.
those two themes are separated. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I actually give it the ranking?
I don't think you gave a score.
I didn't. 2.5.
2.5. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice inversion of scores then, because I gave it a 3.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah, I did enjoy it actually. I went into it thinking it was going to be pretty weird and pretty uncomfortable, and it was, but it was also really well made.
Yeah.
And Susan Terrell carries it. I think if it was anyone else doing it a bit more sort of comical or over the top, it wouldn't have worked. Or if it was anyone who wasn't committed to going all the way with it, it wouldn't have worked. But she finds this really sweet spot of like actually doing a really good job of acting at this extreme level that made it really quite impressive. And the supporting actors were good. I thought Billy was okay. I just felt so sorry for him.
Yeah.
Throughout, I was just like, man,
He's having a really tough time.
poor guy. Yeah, the whole time is really, yeah,
But he's got a lovely girlfriend.
yeah, and a caring coach.
And a caring coach.
And you know what? Yeah, like, I'm going to come back to that as well. Like, I did like the coach's character.
Yeah.
I thought he was, he was a sympathetic character, which is a shame. But the fact that he was sympathetic was at least something positive to come out of his side of things.
Yep.
And that he was, he it wasn't that he was, invested in Billy for nefarious reasons. He was just a caring person. And the fact that he was gay was completely tangential to that. And unfortunately subject to all of the cops' awful views. But yeah, I liked him. I liked him as a character. I wish they'd explored his relationship with the TV guy a bit more. And the fact that he didn't seem too bothered when the TV guy got murdered.
Yeah.
He didn't seem to care all that much.
They kind of make a point of it. Like the cop says, because at this point he's sort of figured it out. And he's talking about Billy, like, oh, Billy's very, like, he's very perseverant. He's coming in, he's playing basketball. He's a real trooper. Like, 2 days ago, he saw a really horrible, grisly murder. It's strange that people can, like, just go back to work and go back to their lives after something like this. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? And he's, like, kind of pressuring him because he knows that the coach, they had to keep their relationship secret. So, like, the coach wouldn't have been able to let anyone know how much he was grieving, and the cop really like pokes at him for that, which sucks.
Yeah, it does.
He was such a horrible character.
He was just
hated him.
Thoroughly unlikable and disgusting, and
the dog hated him as well.
Yeah, dog's got a good judge of character, man.
That's exactly what I wrote. That dog's a good judge of character.
Yeah. Yeah, and other than, I mean, yeah, it was good. I liked it more than I didn't like it. There were the sort of standard, sort of production issues, I guess, with a film of this age that, I'm going to be a bit critical of, just the kind of, I don't know, some of the stunts and some of the scenes were just irrelevant and used for the sake of it, and I didn't really enjoy that. And the pacing, a little bit, I don't know, it kicks off quite quickly with the murder of the TV guy, and then it kind of slows down a little bit before it picks up again. Yeah. And I felt like it kind of, meandered a little bit. Yeah. Where it could have, we could have just gone for it, proper downhill race to Psycho City, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was worth a watch, and
I'm certainly glad I watched it.
Yeah. Worth a watch.
I think this goes to show that sometimes you got to watch a film that's outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Maybe if this had been terrible, I probably still would have been glad I watched it. Because it's pushing my boundaries. I'm broadening my horizons.
Exactly. So Cannibal Holocaust next week, yeah?
No.
Okay.
Maybe next time we cover Video Nasties.
I really don't want to watch that film.
No, neither do I.
I really don't.
Maybe give it a couple of years and we'll warm up to stuff like that.
God,
I remember they covered it in what was it? What film was it for? We were talking about. We're talking about Eli Roth's History of Horror. Oh, that was where I heard about Who Could Kill a Child. They covered it in that. They were talking about Cannibal Holocaust in that as well. Yeah. And even all of these like horror industry professionals, and even Eli Roth, who has made, and
I mean, he made Hostel, man, like I said,
pretty twisted stuff, says like, yeah, this is a really difficult film to watch, but if you're a horror fan and you really feel like broadening your horizons, give it a go. So like, if even to him that's pushing boundaries, I don't know.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Cool. So that was Video Nasties. Part 1, shall we say, for now, possibly to return in the future. We shall see. Neither of the films I think were overly difficult to watch. They weren't like turn off your TV difficult. Yeah, they were a bit uncomfortable in places, particularly the second one. I can't bother saying the full title again. It's so difficult to say.
Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker.
Thank
it's
you.
such a good title.
I know, but
I
it's
really
so
like
it. Tongue twister. Say it 3 times fast. Yeah, it was a bit uncomfortable to watch, but it was good and it was worth it. So there's maybe some other hidden gems in these lists that we could come back to. But next week we have a bit of a niche one for you. You've put all these themes together, so I'm putting the blame on you.
Yeah.
We have evolutionary horror. Now, what would you take that to mean?
Oh, you're asking me? So, like, I guess it's like sort of the body horror of, like, your body changing in a way that you don't want it to. Changing into a further form of humanity that is far removed from what it is now.
Yeah. So, yeah, an extension of body horror.
Yeah.
Looking at, specifically physical evolution or devolution.
Yeah.
I guess. Do you want to tell me what you've got for next week?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I'm going to just use this as an opportunity to go for a film that I have had on my list for a very long time. That is a very, very famous film that is probably quite shocking to some people that I've not watched yet. The Fly.
You've not seen The Fly?
I've not seen The Fly. David Cronenberg's The Fly, starring Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, no. Okay. Look, I love The Fly. I don't want to watch it. Okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's a good film.
Talking about extension of body horror, this is...
That is the body horror
pinnacle
film.
Body horror.
Yeah. I mean, Cronenberg is just...
King of body horror.
He's the man.
He's the Pope of body horror.
I've never heard Pope and body horror in the same sentence before, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you going to treat us with next
week?
So,
I had 2 choices. I was originally going to go with Annihilation. Sorry, I always like to discuss my other options, just to give you a taste in case people want to go for other ones. I was going to go with Annihilation, Alex Garland's 2018 film. But I actually, in doing my short bit of research on evolutionary horror, there's another film that piqued my interest. Ken Russell's 1980 film Altered States.
That's really exciting for me because that was my backup as well.
Cool.
That's what I was going to go
Good.
with. If you had gone first and picked The Fly, I was going to go with Altered States.
Excellent.
That's fun.
I knew nothing about this film.
Yeah.
Never heard of it before. Saw some of the imagery from it and thought that looks like the definition of evolutionary horror.
Mm-hmm.
So let's give it a bash. Let's see what it's all about.
This was... Lots of people talk about this as being the film that popularized bladder effects in special effects. So, like, you would get, like, The Howling did it a lot, where it's, like, you would have this, like, fake skin, like the sort of latex skin
and, like,
over the top, and then you would have, like, an air, like a balloon underneath it that would be... So it would be flat when it's empty, but then they would pump air into it. So it's, like, people's skin kind of, like, bulging.
Ugh. Love that.
Love it. Yeah, Altered States does it a lot.
Okay,
I
cool.
think.
Great.
So
we've got William Hurt,
William Hurt.
title character in it.
Yeah.
But actor. No, he's not. Imagine it was about William Hurt.
About William Hurt.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's honor his memory. He's the one who died recently, right?
I don't know. Could be. Which one's William Hurt? Is he the one with the mustache?
Yeah.
Is he the main character in Altered States?
I think so.
Oh, there you go.
I think he's the main scientist.
Cool. All right.
We'll find out next week.
We'll find out.
And if you want to find out too, then you'd better tune in.
Follow us on Spotify and on our social medias,
Yeah.
etc., etc.
We have great fun. We don't post that much, but
We should post more.
feel free to interact. We'll post back.
Follow us first, and then we'll post more.
Yeah. That's the deal. Cool. Yeah. Thank you for joining us for Video Nasties this week. We will see you next week for evolutionary horror. Can't wait to devolve into a big puddle of goop.
Yeah, we're going to go back into the...
Primordial goop.
The primordial slime.
Yeah.
Oh, I love a good slime.
I know. You love a goop.
Oh, The Fly. That's a good slimy film.
That's a...
I love a good bit of slime.
Oh, there's so much goop. I don't want to see the goop. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.